Genice Paullay-Beazley. I'm originally from New York City. I'm 46 years old. I am a strength and conditioning coach, and I own a strength and conditioning facility here in Auckland, New Zealand. I grew up in a working class, poor family, my mom and my grandparents. My father was an addict, so he was out of my life. He was out of prison, and he was killed in 1978. So I always knew about him, but he wasn't in my life at all. And then Mom and I moved into our own place with her repeat performance, otherwise known as my stepfather. He immediately brought a lot of bad influence into the house. So he was a drug dealer and a drug user himself. Seeing what I saw and feeling how I did, it was a natural progression for me to kind of get into life as well, so to speak. I remember being like 13 years old and like laying on the floor, just not wanting to exist anymore. You know, just not wanting to be there. So when I started dipping into their stash, and I got in a lot of trouble for it, I don't say I felt great, but I didn't feel as bad as I used to feel. So, you know, when I first found weed and booze with friends in the building, in the neighborhood, it was the most natural thing for me to do. You know, I was a kid that was told not to do it, but yet everyone around me was doing it, so. As a result of me being a foster kid, I wound up getting a scholarship to university. And I lasted about a year and a half, and then my reason for taking time off was to follow a boyfriend out to California. And that semester turned into 4 years of complete and utter abandon. I wound up getting modeling contracts that sent me around the world. It all fueled my using, which just proportionately got worse and worse and worse. That's when I found narcotics, speed. Pretty much that was my baby. And alcohol lubricated everything. That was I called my lubricant. It just lubricated everything. And when I got back to New York, my agent in New York was like, they took one look at me and were like, we can't use you anymore. They held up a picture to me and said, you don't look like this anymore. I was still in my delusion. I was still in my insanity, you know what I mean? At the time, all I cared about was getting more. Years went by. I started getting into heroin. And I remember walking across this park in the Lower East Side, Tompkins Square Park, thinking, if you're up there, if anybody's out there, stop me. And this is a feeling I really hang on to, like where I didn't want to be doing it anymore, and I couldn't stop. Like my feet were just going, and I wanted nothing more than to not be going there. It was hell. And the next morning I called my bros, and they took me down to a meeting, and that was September 20th, 1993. So that was my first day clean on this stretch. So that was over 22 years ago. And it was pretty ugly. At this point, I realized that there were sores going down my legs, and then suddenly the sores were starting to come out of my face. I went back to school at that time. I was about to completely drop out. The sores were getting so bad, I thought I should probably go to the doctor. I was 10-day clean. I got in to see the school doctor. She did one of these, cancel my appointments for the rest of the afternoon. And it turned out that I had such advanced staph infections in my blood. That's what the sores were, and they were reaching my heart. And she said, you didn't have long to go, lady. So they put me on massive doses of antibiotics. Somehow still managed to go to school and get to meetings no matter what, because that's what I hung on to. But the inherent nature of the disease of addiction is that we're in denial about it. That's not the inherent nature of any other disease, to deny that you have it. That is why it is so difficult to treat. I would just say to anybody who thinks they have a problem with substances, you probably do. If you have DUIs, if you've been arrested for it, you definitely do. I'd love to see less people need to come into recovery, but they're coming out with more flavors of Absolute and more kinds of drugs and stuff I've never even heard of. So addiction is alive and well in the world, so I think that those of us in recovery have that obligation to give it back to those who need it.